What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. And we are coming to you guys after the Cavs' latest win, 118-117. And Chris, I think this game was ugly. I don't think I have a whole lot of nice things to say about how anybody played, except for two players that I'll get to later. So I'm going to get the good stuff out of the way so we can have a reality check when it comes to this team. The Cavs are 53-10. Obviously, that they are the ninth team in NBA history to begin a season 53-10 or better. 5 of the previous 8 teams won an NBA title with that record. 3 teams that didn't win the title, the 2015-2016 Warriors, they lost to the Cavs. The 2015-2016 San Antonio Spurs, obviously the Cavs won that year as well. And 2019-2020 Bucks, where the season paused because of COVID and the pandemic. The magic number for the Cavs to clinch a top seed in the Eastern Conference is 12. And prior to the season, the longest winning streak in Cavs history was 13 games. They've now met or exceeded that mark twice this season after tonight's win marks their 13th win in a row. Obviously, we know that they started the season 15-0. Chris, getting into the nuances of this game, I mean, what is going on with this sleepwalking team? Obviously, 4 games and 5 nights. It's been a long trek for this team, but I don't think we want to make excuses, especially as there are only 19 games left in the season.
No, I don't think they're excuses. I think sometimes, Ethan, people confuse excuses with explanations. And sometimes there's logical explanations to explain the reason why a team doesn't perform at its best. It is going to be a very difficult March for the Cavs. Let's just be honest about it. It's not necessarily about the quality of opponent. It's about the grueling schedule that is going to face them. And every single March, it's the same thing. But when you play 16 games in 30 days, with 10 of those coming on the road, you're not always going to be at your best. You're not always going to have it. In the words of Kenny Atkinson tonight, the Cavs, their energy level was probably half tank for a majority of the game. In the words of Donovan Mitchell, yeah, we won. Yeah, we won. So he didn't have a lot to say about this one either. I think everybody understands that the Cavs did not perform to their best tonight. The Cavs played down to the competition, and they were still able to get away with it because they stiffened up their defense late in the game and because they took 51 free throws. The Hornets could not guard them down the stretch in late game situations without fouling them. That's the most free throws that the Cavs have taken as a team in nearly 20 years. So, there were things that they did not do well for a majority of this game, but when they needed to make plays down the stretch, when they needed to come up with timely defensive stops, they were able to do it. So, like I said, there isn't too much to talk about from tonight's game. I think there are going to be more of these types of games as we get down the stretch of the season. I don't think in any way are they alarming. I don't think in any way did they speak to the Cavs have a problem or a weakness that can be exploited by another team once you get into the playoffs. In the words of Kenny Atkinson, this is the time of year where it's just find a way. Find a way to win. They talk about March in the NCAA tournament, survive in advance. Well, when it comes to the NBA, it's just about finding a way at this point.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't want to characterize it as this team has done this all season, but like when we talk about the last stretch of games that they've had, like this has been a recurring theme for them. Just again finding a way in the fourth quarter. Tonight it was Donovan Mitchell having a double-digit performance in the fourth quarter, but also knowing that there were moments where Evan Mobley had a huge play. DeAndre Hunter had huge plays. Those are the two that really stuck out to me. Donovan Mitchell had 12 points on 8 of 10 from the free throw line in the fourth quarter. But I think, and also that we'll get into a little bit about the free throw shooting and how they simply have not been good enough at times when it comes to getting and making the free throws or the free ones at the charity stripe. Um, but Evan Mobley having that sidestep, sidestep 3-pointer was huge for the Cavs, right? And then obviously the move itself is what really caught everybody's eye. Like he's done that in practice, he's done that on the side in warm-ups and stuff. But to see him go through that progression, even if it was more so because the shot clock was winding down, I think him adding those different skill sets to his bag are what is going to push him over the top as an offensive player, because it creates a level of unpredictability that defenders just can't hang with. And then DeAndre Hunter having the putback and just big time rebounds and big time plays, I think is something we're coming accustomed to. And this team obviously hasn't lost since they've made the trade for DeAndre Hunter.
I think the other important thing from tonight's game, Ethan, is that Kenny Atkinson showed that sometimes he's going to finish games with Jarrett Allen still. Sometimes a game is going to call for Jarrett Allen to be out there. And when the Cavs are struggling on the defensive end of the floor in the fourth quarter and they don't have the same kind of rim protection and he feels like the opponent is getting too many drives to the basket, too many finishes around the rim, there's still an opportunity for this team to go to Jarrett. Like what makes the Cavs so dangerous when it comes to a potential 7-game series in the playoffs is that not every single series calls for the same thing. Not every single series calls for them to play a specific style. What a luxury it is for the Cavs to be able to, at times, if they have to, use a closing lineup with Jarrett Allen and Evan Mobley together, or feel like they can be just as effective playing in a different kind of way with DeAndre Hunter, Max Strus, and Evan Mobley as the 3 front court players, or Evan Mobley, Dean Wade, and DeAndre Hunter as the 3 front court players. It just shows the versatility that the Cavs have within their lineup construction. That whatever the game is going to call for, they feel like they have an answer for that. They feel like they have a lineup solution to that. And Kenny Atkinson said before the game tonight that, this is the time of year for the Cavs where it's not necessarily about installing more stuff. It's about streamlining stuff. And it's about, just figuring things out in late game situations. And he said one of the things that he's really focused on as the playoffs get closer and closer is how do the Cavs execute in critical moments? Now, you can sit here and you can say, well, a majority of their execution in the fourth quarter came at the free throw line. It's true. More than half of their points came at the free throw line. But they repeatedly put the Charlotte Hornets in a bind on the defensive end of the floor where, Charlotte had no choice but to foul, to prevent shots, or to try and keep guys in front of them, or try and take the actions away from the Cavs that they were running offensively. So it did feel like their execution was where it needed to be in the fourth quarter. And a big part of that was Jarrett Allen. Jarrett Allen was on the floor. The Cavs needed to play big tonight. And credit to Jarrett, somebody who has been out of the closing lineup basically since the All-Star break in meaningful games, in close games. He has his number called, and he goes out there, and he's a big reason why the Cavs won the game. He's a big reason why the Cavs limited Charlotte to 3 made shots over the final 5:38 of this game. So it just shows the depth. It just shows the versatility of the Cavs, that they can use a bunch of different looks in late game situations, depending on what the situation calls for and depending on the team that they're going to be playing against. And it just shows that there are going to be some nights still that when the Cavs are looking for a closing lineup, that Kenny believes that Jarrett needs to be a part of that. And it's not going to be every game. But there are still some where Jarrett's importance really, really shows itself in crunch time moments. And tonight was certainly one of those. I thought he was great down the stretch for the Cavs.
And Chris, you mentioned like Kenny Atkinson's not necessarily adding new things to what they want to do. And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier in the season when he was like, we're like 70% added everything into this offense. Now it feels like he might not necessarily have everything implemented, but when you're adding an entirely new piece, and DeAndre Hunter and Javonte Green fits into that category as well, and they're still trying to learn the different things that are already in place that the Cavs have become vastly familiar with, it's like, okay, well, if our fifth option, or in some cases our third option, isn't able to have plays ran for him because he simply doesn't know the plays, that makes things a lot more difficult. And this is not knocking DeAndre, because we've heard Kenny Atkinson praise him for being able to jump in and learn schemes and all these different things. But it does pose an interesting question of how the Cavs are going to operate in the playoffs, how they're going to be ready to run these different plays. Obviously, there's still 19 games left. They're still going to have limited practice availability, and then obviously into the playoffs when they get the first round bye. Basically, when they play in the play-in tournament, you get to wait and find out who you play. So I just think there's going to be time for him to get adjusted, but I'm interested to see if DeAndre Hunter is a guy that Kenny Atkinson would rather just have him be free flowing and not necessarily run plays for him, rather than just having plays set up. And that's kind of something that he talked about with Darius and Kenny wanting to call plays for Darius, and Donovan having kind of his pulse on the offense whenever he's running it. So it's different things for different guys, different strokes for different folks. What do you think about that, Chris, and how that has developed over his time being here?
Ethan, I just think DeAndre is a blender. I think he's a guy who can find a way to make an impact no matter what role you put him in, right? There weren't a lot of plays called down the stretch for him tonight, but he was there to get an offensive rebound following a Donovan Mitchell miss that put the Cavs in front for good. And then on the next defensive possession, he was there crouching down in a stance and guarding Miles Bridges, who had a career high 46 points. And he stopped Miles Bridges. He stripped the ball away from Miles Bridges. That was a critical moment in the game. And DeAndre's just somebody who throughout the course of his career, whether it was in college or in the NBA, he just finds a way to make winning plays. He finds a way to surround himself with winning situations, and his game translates to winning. And that was a big draw when the Cavs were doing all their research on DeAndre, when they were doing all their background checks on DeAndre. They were talking about his on-court fit, his off-court fit. They kept going back to his pedigree, and they saw him as a winning basketball player. And I know that's cliche, and I know an organization's always going to say that, but it's played itself out that kind of way because it's not always about DeAndre and what DeAndre does, whether he makes shots, whether he doesn't make shots, whether he gets rebounds or he doesn't get rebounds, whether he gets assists or doesn't get assists, whether he has play calls for him or not. You know what I mean? It's about how he has elevated this team, the options that he has given to this team, the style that this team is able to play because of him. You know what I mean? Like in some of these late game situations, they're able to downsize and take Jared Allen off the floor because the Cavs don't feel like they're losing defensively because they have DeAndre Hunter next to Evan Mobley. And sometimes it's Max Strus, and sometimes it's Isaac Okoro, sometimes it's Dean Wade, maybe it's going to be Sam Merrill, depending on a situation. But the two components are Evan Mobley and DeAndre Hunter in the front court, and those guys being switchable, and those guys both being able to hold their own inside, protect the paint, guard inside, guard outside, finish possessions with rebounds, play with strength and physicality. Like, the beauty of having Jarrett and Evan together is what it brings to this organization defensively. That's always been the common theme. But if you feel like you can go to a lineup where you take Jarrett off and you still are the same caliber defense, you gain so much more offensively. And that's part of the reason why in some of these games against Boston, against Portland, against Miami, it hasn't been Jarrett Allen out there because the Cavs needed the spacing, because the Cavs needed the shooting, because the Cavs needed the offensive potential. And if DeAndre is going to continue to make winning plays and do these things at both ends of the floor, where he just finds himself in the middle of the action and what matters most to this team, then it's going to be hard for Kenny Atkinson to ever justify taking him off the floor in those kinds of situations. So again, I don't think it's so much about DeAndre and his production and DeAndre and his role within the offense. It's just what his presence allows the Cavs to do and what his presence has meant to the Cavs' success since his arrival.
And I think that's important to note, especially when you talk about closing minutes, because the conversation as soon as DeAndre Hunter was traded for was, does he get added to the starting lineup? And I think Kenny Atkinson in this Cavs organization is seeing what he's been able to do in those closing minutes. And I think that's more important than anything because you still get to mediate his minutes and figure out where he fits in best. You like him coming off the bench with Ty Jerome and having a spark element when it comes to that. And then you also like Max Strus next to the core four. But obviously in the last couple of games, Max Strus and the core four haven't had the same productivity as what we're used to. But I think what we're continuously learning about Kenny Atkinson is he'll say that there is going to be changes made. There is going to be this and that that we have to monitor and keep an eye on. But the fact is, like, it's changing in game. It's changing based on matchup. It's changing based on what is happening throughout the course of a game. It's not necessarily like we're going to change it game by game. But if something is calling for it to make an adjustment, he is willing to do that. And that's been something that we've seen with the Jarrett Allen minutes, when we've seen with the Max Strus minutes. He played just 21 minutes tonight. Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro, Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, these rotational pieces based on what the Cavs need, based on what they need from their star guys or what they don't need from their star guys in every given scenario, has been a key piece, a key aspect of what Kenny Atkinson has been able to do with his rotations and switching it out. And what he loves to say when we ask about a decision he makes is they all understand. They get it, right? They get that things are can fluctuate. They're flexible. They're not necessarily stuck in the mud. And that's what makes this team, again, versatile, unpredictable, and has led to this 13-game win streak.
So here's the thing about DeAndre Hunter, too, Ethan, is that there was a moment in the fourth quarter. It was right around the 6-minute mark. And one of the Cavs players, it was either Donovan Mitchell or Darius Garland, they used a high screen. They drove to the basket. The defense kind of collapsed on them. And one of them kicked it into the corner for Isaac Okoro, who was wide open in the corner. And Isaac missed the shot, right? And it's not to say that he hasn't hit those shots throughout the course of the year or he's always going to miss those shots when it comes to the playoffs. But at that moment, DeAndre Hunter came off the bench because Kenny Atkinson was saying to himself, hey, look, if that same situation presents itself and that's DeAndre over there in the corner, what does that mean for Donovan on the next drive? What does that mean for Darius on the next drive? It means that finish for those guys is a lot easier because the defense is just not going to leave DeAndre Hunter. They're not. They're going to stay attached to him because they understand his reputation. They understand the big shots that he's already hit during his time with the Cavs. So I think it was the next possession. They ran something very, very similar, and it led to Donovan Mitchell getting free throws. So it's just like those kinds of things that Kenny Atkinson is looking at throughout the course of the game. And those are the things that DeAndre, those are the ways that DeAndre can impact this team without even scoring a basket. He didn't score on that next possession, right? But his his presence alone in the offense, it opened up a driving lane for Donovan Mitchell to get fouled. And then on the next possession after that one, DeAndre was involved in the action with Jared Allen, and he assisted on a Jared Allen layup. So it's just all these different things that Kenny Atkinson can now do with this lineup. He's still trying to figure it out, and he's trying to experiment with different things in different situations, because the only way that you're going to get these answers, what works, what doesn't work, who works best with who, you have to try these things. You have to try these things in game situations to figure out, are they going to be successful? Are they going to be a failure? Because I don't think coming into this year, Ethan, that anybody, including Kenny, thought that one of their best two-man groupings was going to be Sam Merrill and George Niang before George was traded. But guess what? It turned out to be, because they kept using it over and over and over again, and they kept seeing signs of it working over and over and over again. So those are the things that Kenny is still trying to figure out when it comes to DeAndre specifically, because it's so early still into this process. It's not necessarily, where does he like his shots or how can I best utilize him? It's who does he play best alongside? Who does his skill set blend best with? Is it him and Donovan together? Is it him and Darius together? Is it him and Ty together? Is it him surrounded by the core four? All those things. That's part of what the remaining games on this. I mean, obviously they want to win and they want to secure the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference. But part of what this final month is about is getting answers to those kinds of things. Is DeAndre better in a switch scheme? Is he better in a hedge scheme? Is he better in a zone? Can he be like a zone buster that we move to the elbow extended, that little opening in a zone when Miami goes to it, when Indiana could go, like all these different things he's trying to figure out with DeAndre. And while he's still figuring these things out, DeAndre is finding a way to make a tangible difference for this team.
Yeah, and we've seen it a lot already from DeAndre, and I think we can not 100% say that this is the best option that they could have gone with. We still got to see what happens in the playoffs, but like this is a trade that I think the Cavs will remember when it comes to the playoffs and how they stack up against different teams. But I want to get to this last storyline, probably the most important storyline of this game. Free throws, man. What, like the Cavs took 35 free throws the other night and then they get to take 51 tonight? Like that is the most since 2007 that they've taken in a game. And I know I was kind of getting on the guys for their free throw numbers this season. Obviously, outside of Donovan Mitchell, I think they missed 2 tonight. But Donovan Mitchell was 12 of 18. Like, and I know he was getting on himself after the game because he hates missing 1 free throw, much more when it's 6. The Cavs earlier this season had complained about not getting to the free throw line, right? Because they have some of the most drives in the NBA, and they attack the rim relentlessly, even if it is for driving kicks and all these different things. They're still getting hacked on these drives. What do you think about the fact that the Cavs have had combined 80 free throw attempts in like the last couple of games, and the fact that they have been getting more respect from the referees, maybe? What do you think that is, and does that come with the territory of them being one of the best teams in the NBA?
Well, I think it's the style that they play, Ethan. I think if you have an attack mentality, if you have a drive to the basket mentality, eventually you feel like you're going to get rewarded with those things. And they're very difficult to guard. The teams in the NBA that are going to get fouled are the ones that defenses feel like we've got to do things to try and prevent them from scoring baskets. We got to do things to try and prevent them from getting into the rhythm of their offense. The whole thing about 10 years ago when playing against the Golden State Warriors was be physical off the ball, grab them, hold them, do whatever it takes to try and take them out of their rhythm because they don't like those kinds of things. So when it comes to playing against the Cavs, there's so many random cuts, right? There's so much movement within the half court offense. There's so many guys that can, pass, dribble, shoot, play make for others, score at 3 levels. Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland are very, very difficult to contain for any defender. So when you have the Cavs functioning at such a high level consistently on the offensive end of the floor, it's going to continuously put a defense in a bind, and they're going to be a step behind, or they're going to feel like they have to grab or get more physical or try and fight through screens in a different kind of way, or be up a little bit tighter when it comes to their ball pressure and stuff like that. And guess what? That's going to lead to fouls. And then if teams are going to switch the way that some of these other teams recently have against the Cavs, then they're going to have some mismatches. And Evan Mobley is going to be matched up against guards. And Jared Allen's going to be matched up against guards. And DeAndre Hunter is going to have a physical mismatch as well. And what happens in that situation? The smaller defender probably panics, probably gets a little bit too handsy, and they get whistled for these things. It's not a surprise, though, that the foul magnet Hornets kept fouling repeatedly. I mean, LaMelo had 5 fouls in the second half. He had 1 foul at halftime. And then the start of the third quarter, he fouled, then he fouled, then he fouled. And then he sat on the bench, and then they brought him back in, and they fouled again. So, when you're a defense like the Hornets and you don't feel like you have the pieces to match up well enough with a high octane offense like the Cavs, it's going to lead to you probably doing some things illegally on the defensive end of the floor to try and slow them down. So it all starts with the attack mentality of the Cavs. It all starts with the pace of the Cavs and how quick they get into their offensive sets and the continuous bind that they put these defenses in. If you continue to keep these defenses off balance, you're going to continue to get rewarded for your aggressiveness, you would think. Anyway, 51's a lot. 31, 31 points in the fourth quarter and 17 free throw line. It's like the Hornets didn't even make the Cavs have to make shots in the half court to beat them, to manufacture this comeback, because they just kept fouling them over and over and over. So it was a lot. I think it's probably a bit of an anomaly. I don't think it's going to happen again Sunday against Milwaukee, because Milwaukee's a better team. Milwaukee's a better defensive team, and they don't have to resort to grabbiness and physicality and some of this other stuff. But it all starts with how attack-minded the Cavs are and the constant pressure that they put on these defenses.
And Chris, I think the last part about this is the Cavs have become somewhat reliant or known for, in these close games, relying on their free throw shooters because they foul on the defensive end to put the opposing team at the line while up 3, right? Mm-hmm. So this is a concept and a scheme that goes back years and years and years, but Kenny Atkinson has been utilizing it at a lot, right? And it makes the opposing team want to do the same thing, kind of, because you don't want the other team to go up 3 or go up 2, or if you're up 1 at that point after making your free throws, and you want to make sure they can stay as close as possible. But when teams do this, and then guys like Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, obviously tonight it was Donovan who missed 2, and that's basically what made the game a 1-point score to end the game. But is that an area of concern for this Cavs team? Nope. Okay.
Nope, it's not. I mean, if it was a season-long problem, then sure, I would be probably harping on it a little bit more on a night like tonight. but the Cavs are basically top 10 in the NBA in free throw percentage. And I think in end of game situations, there's enough confidence. Donovan's not Steph Curry, right? But Donovan's a really, really good clutch free throw shooter. And Darius Garland is one of the best free throw shooters in the NBA. And they also have Ty Jerome, who's one of the best free throw shooters in the NBA. So I think there are enough guys. DeAndre is a good free throw shooter too, by the way. There are just enough guys on this team where in an end of game situation where you've got to put a team away at the free throw line, the Cavs have enough guys that they can go to that they should trust. And there's no reason to lose confidence in Donovan in these kinds of situations because of tonight against Charlotte. Just like there wasn't any reason to lose confidence in Darius, when he was going through his late game free throw struggles, where basically he lost his chance at 50, 40, 90 because of one game where he just kept missing free throws over and over and over again.
All
Again,
right.
if it was a consistent theme, I'd be right there with you, but it's not. Like, these kinds of things feel like anomalies to me. And I do think like it's important to point out that they're going to be in a lot of tight games, especially when you talk about the playoffs. I know the Cavs are a dominant team, and they have been throughout the course of this season, double-digit wins, 20-point wins. But in the playoffs, there are going to be close games. And me personally, and I think the Cavs as well, they have confidence in Darius. They have confidence in Donovan. They have confidence in Ty Jerome that they can insert him into a lineup knowing that a team is going to fall. And Kenny believes strongly, Ethan. He believes strongly in the fall up 3 thing. Don't be surprised, too, if he falls up 6 in some situations, too, because that keeps it a 2-possession game. With today, modern NBA, 3-point shooting, if you give a team a chance when you're up 6 to make a 3 and make it a 1-possession game, that can change the tenor of it in late game situations. So don't be surprised if, like Joe Mazzulla, like JJ Redick, like some other great coaches of the recent past, don't be surprised that if the Cavs get into a situation that they start fouling up 6 too. I could see Kenny Atkinson as that kind of coach.
Just to put some stats behind my thinking, and I wasn't saying that it's a concern when it comes to the clutch free throws. I'm saying that it's something that I've noticed as of late, and that can go back to the Houston Rockets game where the Cavs lost one of their only 10 losses this season at the free throw line. But in clutch stats on NBA.com, the Cavs have the most free throw attempts per game, but they have the 16th best free throw percentage in the league. So I definitely think that's something to monitor. But I wanted to get into what you said right there about Kenny Atkinson fouling up 6, fouling up 3. What do you think about that set? I'm not saying this. I'm saying this from the internet. There are some people that consider it cowardly. Do you think it's a good strategy? Do you think that the game should not be won or lost at the free throw line? What's your take on the scheme of fouling up 3, fouling up 6 even?
We don't have to worry about machismo here. There are no pictures in a box score. It's about winning the game and what mathematically gives you the best chance to win the game. The Cavs following up 3, part of that is they believe in their free throw shooters, in Donovan and Darius. They believe that they can win that free throw shooting contest down the stretch, but it's also smart. You want to let Charlotte go down the floor and draw up a play for Miles Bridges on a career high to get an open 3, another open 3 like the previous one that he hit? No, you don't want to give a team a chance to tie the game with a 3 like that. You foul them, you send them to the free throw line, you put pressure on them. You make them then have to make a decision. Do we try and make both? Do we make one and miss the second one on purpose and then we get into a scramble mode? Kenny Atkinson's job, any coach's job, is to win the game. Doesn't matter how. Doesn't matter if it's cowardly or not. Doesn't matter if it has been done in the past or not. It's whatever you think is going to give you the best mathematical chance to win the game. And keeping a team from a possession where they would tie the game is just brilliant. It's smart strategy. It's good basketball. It's what every team should do in that situation, provided that you have a capable enough free throw shooter that if that guy makes two, you feel like your guy is going to be able to inbound the ball, take the ball, go and make his free throws as well. And then you get into the same thing. Run out the clock as best you can without giving the team an opportunity to tie the game. Now, look, Charlotte had an opportunity for a go-ahead heave at the buzzer because Donovan missed 2 free throws at the end of the game. Very uncharacteristic. But even that shot, that was a low percentage shot, because the other thing that it helps you with when you continue to follow up by 3 is that now all of a sudden, how is that other team going to use their timeouts? You know what I mean? Like sometimes they're going to call timeout, they're going to draw up a play, and then that becomes a worthless timeout because you foul up 3 and you don't let them execute that play the way that they wanted. And then on the next possession, they're out of timeouts. And instead of calling a timeout, advancing it to half court, now they got to throw up a half court heave as the clock is expiring. Such was the case for the Charlotte Hornets tonight. So I just think there are so many different advantages that you gain by following up 3. And it's not surprising to me that Kenny, being as analytically driven as he is, even though he doesn't like that kind of characterization, it doesn't surprise me that he has taken this tactic and he's going to continue to use it over and over and over again. So for all those people that are complaining, it doesn't matter how it's done. As I said, in golf, there are no pictures on a scorecard. It's about making a number. And there are no pictures on a box score. And you don't get bonus points for machismo and less cowardice, if you want to put it that way.
I think I'm going to end with this. I think it's very funny that Kenny Atkinson, and as we know, is so analytically driven, and he's like one of the smartest basketball minds when it comes to like drawing up plays, ATOs. He has like this pamphlet filled with all of these plays, but like after games when, and we know that he takes a while to come and talk to us after games, because he's talking with his players, talking with his staff, talking with his data analytics and all these things. And yet every time we bring up a stat in the post game, he acts brand new, like he hasn't heard the stat before. And maybe there are some that are like, oh, okay, that's a little bit more in depth. But when he's like, oh my God, we're on a 13-game win streak. Come on, Kenny. Come on. Man, we know that you know these things. You don't have to act brand new. It's like a little gimmick for us. It's the beauty of actually getting to talk to Kenny and figure out like his style of coaching and his gamemanship. Like, oh, we didn't know this. We didn't know that. But it's different from Jamie Bickerstaff last year with the injury report, when everybody knew exactly what he was going to say every time he walked in. We'll see. We'll see.
But I think Kenny just likes hearing all these cool stats that these writers come up with, and they actually do the research on their own and want to ask him about it. I think he's impressed. I think he's impressed with the reporters that they come up with these stats and they share them with Kenny. And obviously, if you're a team that has 53 wins, you're the best team in the NBA. You like all the flattering stats that people can say and bring to your attention.
Agreed. But the most important stat, I think, for the Cavs going into their next stretch of games is the fact that they can lock up the number 1 seed in the Eastern Conference with the magic number 12. There's games coming up. There's 19 games left. It's crazy to think about. We're under 20 at this point, Chris. But with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs Insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. The next trip is Milwaukee, and I bet Chris needs food recommendations for when he goes out to Milwaukee. That's not one of his favorite places to go. So if you have something that you would want him to try, send
Spider-Man
it.
meme.
Spider-Man.
Cleveland, Milwaukee. I actually was recruited by a radio station in Milwaukee about 15 years ago, actually. They brought me up there. They took me on a tour of the radio station. They had all this stuff set up where my name was going to be on billboards and stuff like that because I was going to have my own show. And they had this big speech and this presentation for me and stuff like that. So I got a free trip up to Milwaukee. But that was right around the time that I started dating Holly, now my wife. And I just wasn't in the place from a personal standpoint where I felt like it was time to go up there. But I did consider, for all the people that were mad about my Milwaukee comments, I did consider one time, briefly, a potential career path that took me to Milwaukee, where I was going to be the afternoon drive host of one of the radio stations, one of the sports talk radio stations up there in Milwaukee. The timing wasn't right. I took the free trip up there. I listened to what they had to say, but the timing wasn't right. So it's not a knock against Milwaukee. It just, while I was up there and I was, taking a tour of the city and I was looking at potential houses and apartments and stuff like that, I was like, wait a minute. This is baby Cleveland here. This reminds me a lot of Cleveland. So that's why I said Spider-Man meme, Cleveland, Milwaukee, just pointing at each other.
I don't know if you had to vindicate yourself on that one.
It's okay.
Yeah.
I just like sharing my life with you people.
You people.
And if you
want to learn more about Chris's checkered past, you can find out. You can find out with us on Subtext as he sends you all of his stories from his past, all of his stories from his present, all of his stories from his trip to Milwaukee and beyond on Subtext. And to do that, you sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page to subscribe for $3.99 a month. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.